Good afternoon, folks. News 6 meteorologist David Nazario back in the Digital Weather Center for a rather interesting live discussion with you all this afternoon. We've been talking a lot about winter weather, winter activity, snow, and freezing temperatures. And today's discussion is going to kind of piggyback off of that a little bit, but it's also a trending topic here in Central Florida, thanks to Rick Scott and the prior discussions that we've had on daylight savings time and whether or not that should remain a thing, or we get away with having it go away. So before all that, let's go ahead and get you over to our current weather. We always got to talk weather here on News 6, especially when we have the briefings that we do on a day-to-day basis. Taking a look at the water vapor shot out there, I'm going to zoom you on in so you can get a closer look at what's happening. This is the nationwide perspective. And before I go any further, apologies for forgetting my manners. Good afternoon to those of you tuning in over on News 6 Plus, as well as those of you joining us over on the News 6 YouTube channel. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to drop them in the chat box over to my left-hand side, and I will make sure to get to you as soon as I can. This is going to be a fairly short-lived live stream. Just going to quickly get you up to speed on what's happening in our neck of the woods in terms of national and local weather, and then we'll rock into our little discussion on daylight savings and some of the implications and even benefits that we would hypothetically see if it was done away with. So I'll go ahead and zoom us back on down in. So let's do some of my favorite work out here. We're going to go ahead and do some drawing. So first and foremost, we have a pretty bad situation that's ongoing down over the southwest. First and foremost, if you've been following us on News 6 Plus, the Pinpoint Weather app, or just tuning into our broadcasts on a day-to-day basis, this is our next big bowling ball of a system. It is a cold pocket that has worked its way due south with the jet stream running parallel to the west coast of the United States and is now kind of hung up, if you will, over Baja California, northern Mexico, and the desert southwest, creating quite a bit of exhaust for all that plentiful moisture and wintry-style weather for the higher terrain of the Rockies down there. And the reason I say this is a bit of a catastrophic setup right now, I'll clear the ink and I'll break it down for you a little bit more so. We have a textbook Santa Ana setup. If you notice, we have our system spinning here. And if you notice, we already have gratuitous amounts of offshore flow near Las Vegas, the greater LA, San Diego area on the northwest side of this upper low. But then we also have the upper level jet stream digging in out of the northeast, flowing southwest because of how positively tilted this trough is. And if you haven't caught any of my previous live streams, when we talk troughs and phasing and so on, we have positive, neutral, and negative tilts with our big old trough features that extend north to south, bringing down that cold air. And in this case, when it stacks from the north, from the northeast down towards the southwest, kind of going backwards, if you will, against the flow we typically see over North America, that is a positive tilt. And as a result, we have a very fatal orientation in the winds down there, running perpendicular to the high desert mountain terrain, creating a downsloping event. And if you go over to our News 6 Instagram, as well as our News 6 Facebook, and clickorlando.com, I wrote a discussion today that you can read to get yourselves up to speed a little bit on what downsloping is. But essentially, as the name implies, winds, very strong, highest up in the atmosphere, run against that terrain at a perpendicular angle. Let's say your mountains are faced like this, the winds are coming at it like this. And that mountain terrain, or that mountain, the mountains will act as a ramp and bring those winds down to the surface, drying out the atmosphere as they do so. So we have a double-edged sword down there for those fire conditions. And believe it or not, this is the same system that's going to eject out of northern Mexico into the southern plains, the Dixie Alley area, and create our next winter storm event and possibly up our rain chances quite a bit for this upcoming weekend, to include possibly raining out a bit of the Disney Marathon that's been ongoing from today through to this Sunday. And of course, last but not least, it is wintertime. Naturally, this is going to help to reinforce the chilly temperatures that we've had, as well as the wind chill factor. So brace yourselves for that, or should I say, hold on to your butts. XRP Vegas over on News 6, the YouTube. I know it would happen. I would be happy because I have to keep going to visit my daughter in Arizona, and in the winter, they're always an hour ahead of us. It makes me crazy. I'm assuming you're tuning in from out of Las Vegas, and if that's the case, thank you so much for joining us from way out there. And yes, right now, you guys are also in the chilly temperatures, and you're probably getting some really good snow-capped scenery across much of the desert Southwest. All right. So, with that being said, now let's go ahead and get on over. As I mentioned, our temperatures are going to go up before this system arrives, and then we will drop right back down once again as that next system begins to rock through and we get our next frontal system to help cool us off, bring our rain chances up for Saturday and Sunday. And then from there, we're only going to continue the marathon. In fact, myself and a few of the other pinpoint meteorologists here are already tracking our next possible big system that might not only generate rain showers for us, but maybe bring us a chance for thunderstorms. But that's something we can get to at a later time. Let's go ahead and swap on over the screen here. As you can see, this is a lovely article that was written by meteorologist Jonathan Kagis not too long ago when we first visited the topic of getting rid of daylight savings time, and we did implement a bit of a test phase on that. And unfortunately, as you can see in the headline, this is what happened. 8 children were killed on their way to school in only a matter of a 2-week period. In the span of 2 weeks, we lost a total of 8 children, which is disastrous in my opinion. Now, I will admit, if we were to get rid of daylight savings time, it wouldn't have totally negative implications. We would definitely have some positive benefits out of it as well, to include, during certain portions of the year, we would have the longer daytime hours not conflicting with what we look at on our clocks, which basically means that during the summertime, even though the time has not changed, you'll naturally begin to feel as you step outside the day is extending itself, and the nighttime will also begin to roll in at a much later period. And by that, I mean, instead of having the sun set right now around 5:30, 6 o'clock, we would continue to see it set consistently between 7 or 8. And then sometimes even as late as 8:30, 9:30, depending on where we are at during the summertime. And all of this boils down to the angle of the sun pending the season and our orbit around the sun, because that's what dictates the time of day, how much sun we receive during the certain periods of the year, winter, fall, spring, summer, and so on and so forth. That's kind of where daylight savings time came from. We're adjusting for the angulation of the Earth's tilt in relation to the sun, as well as we orbit around the sun, which part of the Earth receives less or more sunlight during the natural, I guess you can say, astronomical circadian rhythm. So, with that being said, let's take a look at some of the data that we have here. UCF history professor Jim Clark said during the midst of the 1970s oil crisis, President Richard Nixon led the effort to make daylight saving time the standard for 2 years to save energy. This initially started in January 1974, Clark said, which led to the sunrise and sunset moving back an hour. So as you can see, this is where it all particularly really was reinforced by not only the economical, but the political emphasis behind it. And unfortunately, as we've tried to kind of manipulate that in our favor, we've seen both positives and detrimental outcomes to that. And so as a result, I have a list that I compiled to my right-hand side here. I will go ahead and read off of it after doing a little homework before doing this live stream with you all. So some positive impacts of keeping daylight savings time permanent. 365 days out of the year, you'd have more evening daylight, as we just alluded to. So you can go out and get some shopping in, maybe play sports for an extended period of time. Social events would be a little easier to navigate, especially that early evening time frame before dusk really settles in. I know a lot of us do appreciate the nightlife, especially our younger crowd out there, so maybe that would be more of a negative impact for you. I personally love the sunset, that golden hour. If we can extend that, that sounds fantastic in my opinion, but of course, this is all hypothetically speaking. We may have some potential energy savings since the sun will be up a lot longer during certain periods of the year, as well as saving energy and cost efficiency during the winter time because we wouldn't need to run certain components of our households, our vehicles, and so on during those windows of time. And then naturally, as we all know, some good old fashioned vitamin D, getting out to the water parks, just getting outdoors, out and about, getting over to the beaches here as a Central Floridian, you'll naturally feel a little bit better being out in the sun, getting some additional vitamin D and vitamin K from the sun that it can naturally provide. Just make sure you're reaching for those sunscreen bottles. You don't want to get a burn or have any of those real detrimental impacts of sun exposure kick off. Then some negative impacts. We have the dark mornings. So since the times wouldn't be changing, we would go from waking up, regardless of the time of the year, to a sunrise. We would be waking up, especially for us early risers. I can personally speak on it myself on two separate occasions. Number one, most recently, I've been doing a lot of the morning shows here at News 6. And if I had to wake up around 1:30 in the morning, and then especially during our weekend shows to where we kind of cut and wrap around 8:30, 9 o'clock, it would definitely be a little disappointing to step outside after rocking into work in the night, leaving in the dark. And then I can tell you, Arizona, when I was stationed in Tucson at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base as a weather forecaster for the USAF, the United States Air Force, we did a lot of rotating shifts. And since Arizona doesn't observe daylight savings time at all, they're their own individual time zone, it was very bizarre to go in for an overnight shift around midnight. I'd get there around 11:30. We'd sit through shift change and kick off our shift at midnight. And then we would get off around 7:45 to 8 o'clock, pending you provided your shift change and the next forecast to whoever was relieving you. And there were instances where it kind of stank, to tell you the truth, brutally. I would go in the dark and I would get off in the dark. Now, granted, it was nice because I'd want to go to sleep as soon as I got home, but it is a little, especially on a Friday when you naturally, especially for my graveyard shifters out there, you do get a little of that second wind when you venture out and the end of a work evening week, and you step out and you see the sun. It's like, okay, great. Now I have some time off. Let's get a little nap in and then conquer the day ahead. So there are some potential health concerns as well with that. It could really permanently disrupt circadian rhythms. We would get used to seeing night during certain parts of the day, day during certain parts of the night, and then when that would flip-flop naturally without the times themselves changing for that mental capacity or that mental adjustment, it could do some damage to us physically and physiologically. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and wrap up. I'm not going to get too heavily into the weeds or the physiological science with you all. Thank you so much for those of you who tuned in over on News 6 Plus and over on the News 6 YouTube channel. A few folks, a very intimate crowd this afternoon. And please feel free to drop a comment or check us out on clickorlando.com. Read the full in-depth article provided by Jonathan Kagis a while ago when we first visited this topic. If you wanted to get more information on the downsloping and the fire event, or just what the local weather could be impacted by this upcoming winter storm, check us out there as well. My article I published earlier this afternoon regarding the next winter storm on, again, clicko.com. And if you have a say and an opinion on what you think about all this, leave us a comment over on YouTube. Reach out to us, send us an email, give us some feedback, let us know. We might run a poll on this. Could you do without daylight savings time, or is it a little more beneficial to your day-to-day? And then maybe without any of the feedback, take a little bit of inventory in case this does become a more serious up-and-coming topic. So with all that being said, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday afternoon. And until next time, this is the Digital Weather Center signing out.